YouTube and on Twitter. So
Okay.
that's going to have to do. I'll repost it on Instagram.
Okay.
But
That's
anyway,
cool. I figured something crazy was going on, so we're good.
Okay. So we'll just go ahead and get to the topics here. How long have you been playing music?
Oh man, since I was probably 14 or 15. Long time. I was part of that original MTV generation, and I saw all those guys, Motley Crue and Poison and all the hair bands. I was like, oh, I want to do that. So,
Right.
I started playing. I did nothing serious though. I mean, I took a few lessons, learned how to read tab, learned basic chords and the basics, and then kind of just took off from there. And my brother and I started a band. But yeah, it's going back several years, without giving my age away too much. It's been a long time.
Gotcha. So what instruments do you play?
Primarily guitar.
Mhm.
I picked around. Second to that's bass. Most guys that play guitar are decent bass players in my experience. So I picked up bass just to supplement my own writing and creativity. All the bands I've ever been, I've just played guitar. I've dabbled with drums somewhat. I can play basic drums. Most of the stuff I do on my albums is guest drummers, or I will program drums using software because I'm not really
Gotcha.
proficient. And then following that, I play keyboards somewhat, and I've been playing the mandolin off and on here and there. I'm not very proficient with that either, but just enough to write the parts that I have in my head. I'll just kind of pick something out, and then, knowing the chords or what scale I want to be in, I'll match that up and just kind of pick around if something kind of matches that. And that's really about it. Of course I do vocals, if you want to call it that, screaming.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So over the course of your musical journey, have you taken lessons at any point, or are you pretty much self-taught? How has that gone?
Yeah, mostly self-taught. Like I said, when I was a teenager, I took lessons for about 6 months, just enough to learn the basics, and that was more or less how to change the strings on the guitar. I learned the notes on the neck. I started to learn how to read music, but I got bored with that really fast because the stuff I wanted to learn, there wasn't really music available. So, but there was tab books, so that was kind of a big thing. So learned how to read tab. But just about 6 months of lessons, and then everything after that, I just pretty much self-taught, self-taught bass, self-taught keys, writing and recording and producing music. That's all self-taught as well. I mean, other than some online tutorials and stuff, but yeah,
Gotcha.
I'm not really taking a lot of lessons.
Gotcha. So tell me, I guess, about your current gear and your setup. I don't know how much you play live, but what do you play? What do you play through? Any effects? That kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I don't play live much anymore. We played a lot in the previous band I was in. It was the Bloodline Severed. It was a Christian metalcore, deathcore band based out of
Mhm.
or more Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was with those guys for about 7 years, and we played live a lot. I mean, in 1 year, I think we played about 200 shows. I mean, it was every
Wow.
weekend, sometimes 2 and 3 times a weekend. We would do what I called like mini East Coast tours. We'd start off on a Friday, play Friday night, Saturday night, sometimes twice on a Saturday. That was rare for us to do that. Then a Sunday, and then get back home because we were all, we had full-time jobs too. But when I was with them, I started playing around with some more of my previous influences, I guess, and stuff that we really didn't play in that band. So I started dabbling in home recording, garage band, and then I just I got heavily into gear at that point. So that got kind of where I am now. I've always been a fan of Marshalls. So right now I have a Marshall DSL-20 head, which I love. A custom Mesa Boogie 212 cab. That's got Celestian vintage 30s in it. And let's see, aside from that, PV 6505 mini head. I've been getting into the mini heads a lot lately. When I played live, I used a full-size 6505. But those things are mega loud. And I mean, I never even turned that thing up past 3. I mean, they're just so loud. So when I started recording at home and quit playing live, I really got into the small, low wattage amps because you could really get that tone without having to blow the windows out of your house, you know.
Right.
So I went with that. So I've got the, like I said, the mini head, and then I've got a small Fender Super Champ that I use for all my clean tones. So I've got 3 different amps or 3 heads that all play through the Mesa cab. And then as far as guitars, I used to be primarily a big Gibson guy. I still am. I mean, I've got 2 Les Pauls. I've got a BFG, which I've had for years. I actually bought that off my brother, who also plays music. And then I've got a Gibson Studio. But my new baby is, it's not really that new. I've had it for a few years. I also bought that for my brother. But it's a Zematis. Not many people know what a Zematis is. They're a Japanese handmade guitars. And
Oh, nice.
it's, I've been dying to like unveil it, so I've got it right here, sitting right here. If you'd like to see it, have you ever seen a Zematis?
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay.
No.
The only person I know professionally is a Tom Kiefer from Cinderella. He played one of these in the Gypsy Road video. But
Oh, cool.
it's got a really sweet, like laser engraved top on it that's metal.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And yeah, I mean they're nice. And this to me has become my Gibson killer. it kind of dominates most of my writing now. But yeah, I probably most of the album I'm working on right now was written 80% with this, and then 20% with the other 2 Gibson Les Pauls. Aside from that, I don't have a lot of pedals. Let me set this down.
Okay.
I've got a small pedal board. I've never been huge on effects, but actually since I've become more of a home recording artist, I've really got more into effects. So right now, another secret weapon, if you could call it that, is not really. I mean, I don't hide it from anybody, but I love the Walrus slow and ambient reverb pedal. I really can come up with some cool stuff with that. And then I pair that with a Electro Harmonix Canyon delay. And next to that, I'm looking at it right here on the floor. I've got a Walrus Audio overdrive pedal too. It's called the Warhorn. Sometimes I go back and forth between that and an Ibanez Tube Screamer. And other than that, I've got a basic tuner pedal, and I've got a couple other little things there that I kind of switch in and out. But that's about it. You know, I'm not a huge gearhead, but I have my share of stuff. You know, and sometimes that changes out from time to time. That's about it.
Gotcha. So here's an interesting question, and I've asked this to everybody, and I get all kinds of different answers, particularly if I'm talking to bass players. But how often do you change strings?
Way less on bass than guitar. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Bass strings are not cheap.
No, they're not cheap, and they do tend to last longer. Even though I probably should change them a lot more. I would say once a year on bass. If I can get away with it before they start sounding really dull and not having any brightness to them. Guitar, right. If I'm playing a lot, I'll change them anywhere from every other week to at least once a month. I definitely, before I start recording, I'll put fresh strings on all the guitars. But yeah, definitely every 2 weeks after heavy playing, if not about once a month on guitars, which again can be pricey if I'm doing it on all 3 guitars. But to me, I just like the sound of fresh strings. You know, once they get dull and they just lose that crunchy, nice, bright tone, you know, that's a key for me to change them real quick.
Gotcha. So, what would you say are some of your personal musical influences?
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, I'm like I said, to go back, I started off, with the hair bands, but as soon as I started watching Headbangers Ball back in the day and seeing some of the stuff like Death, of course Slayer, Metallica, then it's kind of like the downward slope from there. It gets heavy. I went from there to the Florida death metal bands, Obituary. I listened to Deicide, Morbid Angel a lot, but before I became a Christian. And then I went from that into the early black metal bands and the Norwegian, Swedish death metal bands, At the Gates, In Flames, Dark Tranquility. I wasn't so much into the raw black metal early on. I kind of migrated to that later than a lot of people. But then, at the same time, Emperor Satyricon was a lot of that stuff. And then later on, I pretty much, when I became a Christian, I quit listening to all that stuff cold turkey. And
Mhm.
but then I started hearing more Christian band. Well, not many. There was a few. Some more Christian bands dabbling in that sound. Ancestor,
Mhm.
Crimson Moonlight, a lot of those guys. Frost Like Ashes. I was like, oh, this is cool because I love that atmosphere of that music, and
Mhm.
I've never been one that was much when I would write stuff. I didn't want it was not so much about speed, but atmosphere. So when I
Right.
started realizing that Christians could write black metal, and I use that term loosely because I know a lot of people like to call it black metal. I've kind of went on record of not being a big fan of that term for different reasons. But those bands, like I said, the early bands before I became a Christian, I wanted to listen to that, but I some of them I went back and the more pagan bands, I guess, I didn't so much have a problem with. Currently, I still listen to the Wolves in the Throne Room. I'm a big fan of Alcest. Agalloch is a huge influence on my stuff. So the bands that are still considered more, I guess, black metal, but not satanic black metal, more of like
Right.
religion or nature worship. I don't have so much of a problem with that as much. Some people, they're like, oh, how can you be a Christian and listen to that stuff? I to that I have to say, you just whatever your convictions are, you have your convictions, I have mine. But as far as my influence goes, like I said, they're all over the place. And then I also listen to some even post rock bands, a little post rock, some early new wave goth, dark wave stuff. I mean, I'm all over the place. It's if it's good music, I'll try it out and listen to it a little bit here and there and try to implement stuff I like. And you just never know.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, what was the very first concert you ever went to as a fan?
Oh, geez. Kind of caught me on
Going
guard
into
with that one.
going into the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, the biggest one that influenced me that I can remember. Now, I'm sure I went to a few smaller shows before this, but the first big show that really made an impression on me was at the Gates when they were on
Mhm.
the Slaughter of the Soul tour. Um, I saw them in a little hole-in-the-wall place up in West Virginia, and man, they floored me. I mean, everybody there, of course, they were on fire then. I mean, when that album came out, it was just wow, untouchable. But they just came out. There was no lights, no fog machines, no crazy nothing for the stage. He just came out the wall of Marshall amps and just bam! It hit you like they just dropped the CD on the PA system and just turned it to 1,000. It's so tight live, and there's the power and the energy they had. I mean, I would have to say that was probably the biggest, most influential concert that really made an impression on me early on. Like I said, that might not have been my first one that I recall, but that's the first one I remember just sticking with me to this day.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, over the course of your musical career, have you had an opportunity to meet any of your musical heroes?
A few. Most recently, I met. Well, this is going back a few years, not too many, but I met John Hum from Agalloch when he was
Mhm.
playing with Florian after Agalloch dissolved, and he started another project. I've actually talked to him on two occasions. I saw them twice, once in Asheville, North Carolina, and then another time, I want to say it was in Raleigh, but I was able to talk to him both times, which that was really cool. And also talked to Adam D from Killswitch Engage. We weren't playing with them, but I went to a show, and the bass player from
Mhm.
this band I was in, we were able to talk to him for a few minutes, so that was really cool. Um, and we opened up for some other fairly well-known bands back in the day. Top of my head, let's see. In This Moment was one. There was a couple of other shows. Uh, there was. I'm going back several years now, but yeah, to answer, cut it long story short. Yes, I've met a few of people that I thought were really awesome musicians. In my time playing in bands and stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, what was your story of how you came to Christ?
I'm sorry. What was that?
What was your story of how you came to Christ?
Oh, well, I was raised loosely Baptist, but not really. As I got older and got married fairly young, As my family quit going to church, like I said, we just kind of went a few times a year. And as I was a teenager, I really didn't go much at all until I met my future wife. And her grandparents were actually pastors in a church within the Church of God denomination. And she talked me into going to a revival they were having at a small church. It wasn't super small, but it's a decent sized church in rural Princeton, West Virginia, which is a small town in southern West Virginia. And there was I still remember the evangelist's name was Steve Pigram, and he was praying over people. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Church of God. It's a Pentecostal denomination, and so they like to pray over
Mhm.
people, and they kind of work in gifts of the prophetic a lot of times. And of course, going into that, I was very skeptical and everything. But as I was sitting there listening to him preach, he's kind of just like pointing at people and kind of like, as they like to say, reading their mail. Well, he pointed at me and he said, I have a word for you from the Lord. He said, would you care to come up here and let me pray with you? And I was like, oh, sure, whatever. I'll try this out, skeptical again. And man, he it's like he knew me for years. He's like, oh, you've dabbled in dark music. It's got a hold on your life. You've looked into dark satanic literature, which there was no way he could have known that. But I actually had a book on demonology at my house that I was studying to write lyrics in my band with my brother. And he just said a few other things and then he just kind of prays over me, and I'm just a feeling just washed over me that I can't explain. And I knew. I was like, wow, this is real. And kind of just gave my life to the Lord at that point and never looked back. And so that's, like I said, I quit listening to metal pretty much cold turkey. And I was like, well,
Mhm.
this is something I don't want to mess with anymore because this is real stuff. And yeah, it wasn't until years later I even picked up a guitar. I just kind of walked away from all music for a few years. But yeah, that's
Right.
how it happened. Yeah, it was something.
Okay. Well, we're going to get into the portion of this now where we're actually going to talk about Vials of Wrath. And what I want to do before we do is just to give people that are watching this a little taste of what Vials of Wrath is all about. I'm going to play about probably the first minute of As the Shadows Grow Long,
Okay, sure.
uh, just to, like I said, just to give people a taste. So, okay, so somehow we have, there we go. Okay. So tell me about Vials of Wrath. How long has it been a thing, and you know, I know where the name came from, but you can go ahead and talk about that for those that may not know.
Yeah. Well, I used to be heavily into Revelation and just the study of the end times and things like that. So I was in a band, like I said earlier, Bloodline Severed in North Carolina, and I had actually taken a little time away from the band to pursue my business, which was graphic design. I was a full-time graphic designer, and I was getting a lot of freelance work, and took a little bit of a sabbatical from the band, I guess. And so during that time, I thought, maybe I'd like to maybe write some music in my own personal influences, which were like the black metal, the Swedish death metal stuff, things that were focused more on atmosphere and not really so much speed and aggression. So that little clip you played there, actually, it is more of what I like to call the contrast of the light and the dark. So I wanted to really do stuff like that. And I just dabbled around with writing a few things. My first EP actually sounded more like straight up death metal, I guess. But I was like, there's a lot of this out there already. Let me do something a little different. It sounded more like Morbid Angel and that type stuff. So I thought, well, let me go more into the atmospheric direction. And so, like I said, when I was not in Bloodline Severed, I messed around with GarageBand at home, and I got a little cheap interface and recorded a little demo. And I sent it into a little small Christian label that just grabbed onto it. They're like, hey, yeah, we'll make CDs, we'll distribute them for you, and kind of sign you with us. And much to my surprise, it kind of just took off. I mean, it was really well received. People are like, hey, when are you going to write new music? What's going on? You have any plans to do more stuff? And anyway, I went back to the band, to Bloodline, for a short time, and then my job kind of pulled me away again, and some other life circumstances caused me to move to Tennessee. And so that's about 12 years ago now. So that all that transpired. So it's been a serious project and a passion of mine. I want to say a hobby, really. I mean, I don't make like a living doing it by any means. I don't play live. I'm more of a studio artist and just put out music that way. But going on, I guess I'm about my 12th year now of taking it serious and using it strong passionate hobby. But the name came from, like I said, from Book Revelation. It was Revelation 16:1. It said, I heard a voice from the temple tell the seven angels to go forth and pour the wrath of God upon the earth. So essentially, it's about when the vials of wrath are being poured out. I was like, oh, well, that would be a really cool name for a band, And all the stuff, I can't say I've regretted it, because I still think it's a cool name, but it doesn't really fit the style of music I do. I mean, a lot of people are like, I'm expecting something really in your face and aggressive, and then you play, like what you just played, with something really light.
Yeah.
And, I like to contrast the light and the dark and beauty and aggression. So, if people hear other parts of my stuff, I mean, it's very much influenced by black metal and, even a little bit of death metal stuff. But yeah, that's where it came from, and I'm still going somewhat strong. Like I said, I'm working on a new album now, and hopefully something will be out within the next year or so.
Gotcha. So, tell me about your songwriting process and how your faith, and I've noticed there's a lot of references to observations of nature and God's creation.
Yeah.
Tell me about the process that you go through in writing.
Sure. Most of my lyrics are inspired by, I like to, one of the reasons I moved to Tennessee, my family did, we love the mountains and nature. And I was actually born in, like I said, southern West Virginia, where there's a lot of mountains, the Appalachian region. And as I got older, I really thought, as much as I like being out in nature and hiking and just being alone, that's my time in prayer and just the tranquility of it. I started to look into the Bible, and I was like, how does that play into my Christian life? And I noticed several places in the Bible where it said Christ often withdrew to the wilderness and to pray. I was like, oh wow, well, if Christ did that, then of course it's probably good for us to do that too. So I take a lot of that time to be inspired. I look around at just different things that are going on in nature, the trees and the peacefulness of it. And I use that time while I'm hiking. I'll usually take a small notepad with me, or if I forget, I'll type lyrics on my phone. But stuff will come to me that way about how God blesses us, when we find time to be alone with Him in nature. And so I'll try to reveal a lot of that through my lyrics. And then I also just like to kind of create a sense of that ambience in the music. So I'll use a lot of field recordings. I'll take my phone or a small recording, record streams or wind blowing or different things like that, and integrate that, because I'm trying to also instill some of that feeling in the music. So when someone's listening to it, hopefully they'll get a taste of what I'm feeling, what I'm coming up with these things. Musically, same thing. I'll come up with riff ideas. I'll be out in the woods, and it sounds cheesy or corny or whatever, but I was like, just a melody will come up to me ahead, and I'll just kind of hum it into my phone or whatever to keep it. Then I'll get home and work out the logistics of it on the guitar or whatnot. That's primarily how I write 90% of my music, really, is that, and just different life experiences and things. I'll write about that too.
Gotcha. So you've kind of answered my next question. So Vials of Wrath is not a full-time thing.
No, I wish it was.
But tell me about your day job.
Well, I think I said earlier I was a graphic designer. I've been doing graphic design primarily for about 25 years. And I was actually an art director for a large Christian church, which was headquartered in North Carolina, for several years. I was also a media director at a large church there. So whatever, and looking back on it, I don't know how I did this, but I had the full-time job there. I was also a media director at church. I freelanced as a graphic designer, and then I tried to squeeze in being in a band. So, and on top of that, I was a husband and a father. So I really, looking back, I was like, did I ever sleep? I don't know how I pulled that off. But yeah, primarily I've been a graphic designer for several years. Worked from home a lot. I was privileged to be able to work out of a home office for several years, especially when I moved to Tennessee. Actually, I still worked as the art director for that church in North Carolina remotely for about 10 years or so. And so that allowed me to have a lot of free time to focus on writing with Vials of Wrath and writing my music. That job kind of dissolved about 2 years ago. So I've been, and I've still been freelancing a little bit, but since then I've been pulling back on graphic designs and getting more into actually doing woodworking. And so when I moved here, my family asked me to, we did some repairs and some things and I built some small little furniture and stuff. And I was like, I really am getting into this. So I've built a few things here and there, and doing pyrography, which is another word for wood burning art. So I've been taking some of the furniture and doing pyrography on the furniture, which is kind of unique as far as I haven't seen anybody else do anything like that. And so I'm dabbling in that right now, and I'm hoping that might turn into a full-time job eventually. So we'll see what happens. But
that is cool.
Yeah, so I appreciate it. Of course, the being in the woodworking and my passion for the nature and all that stuff, it's just kind of works hand in hand. So that's working out really cool.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, my next question was going to be, and this is probably going to take you back some years, because you were saying you really don't play live at this point, but what would you say during the time you were playing live? What was, if you can narrow it down to one or two anecdotes, what have been some of the most interesting experiences you've had playing live?
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's been a few. Bloodline Severed, I can tell you a lot of stories about that band. We got into a lot of situations, booking shows and playing places that were less than ideal. One of them in particular, there's several. I'll throw out a couple of short ones. One of them, we played at a skating rink, and when I say skating rink, it was more of like for skateboarding. So there were ramps and the pipes, half pipes, and everything. Well, I don't remember how this happened. We got booked to play that, and so we were kind of like in the middle of this. We're playing a set, and there's dudes on skateboards and stuff just like whizzing by us, and all this crazy stuff. It was kind of fun and it was cool at the same time. But in the back of my head, I'm kept thinking like, man, please don't hit one of my amps or whatever. So I remember that being really fun. We played at a drag race one time, and so that was kind of odd because I kept thinking, can people even hear us over the roar of these motors? When these big, huge drag race cars were taking off. And they asked us to play, kind of be the band that played music while the cars were pulling up to the drag strip. And then one of the most memorable, which also was one of the most fun, and I'll stop with this one, but used to be, do you remember Cornerstone Music Festival, the big one?
Yeah.
Okay, there was another one called Ichthus that was I want to say it was in Kentucky. And it was like going to be the next Cornerstone. I mean, it was another big Christian music festival. And we played that one, and we were actually able to play right alongside some of the big bands. Skillet played that show or that festival, Demon Hunter. Pretty much anybody who was a big band at that time was able to play. Now, we didn't play on the same stage as those guys, but we played on a smaller stage. But we were still able to be there and kind of be among them and mingle with them. The biggest downside to that I still remember, though, was it was so hot that I think almost every one of us about passed out from playing. But it was fun. It was memorable. And that was probably one of my favorite shows that we ever did.
Yeah. When you're young, you don't understand the value of hydration.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I learned real quick at that show to always have like not just a bottle, but like an entire fountain of water next to you, because I think I almost passed out of heat exhaustion after playing that show, but it was great. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for nothing. It was fun.
Yep. So you said that your current hometown is Maryville, Tennessee?
Yeah. We've lived here going on about 12 years, and I really like it here. It's just at the foothills of the Smoky Mountains, so I do a lot of like I said, a lot of hiking over toward the Smokies or just in the mountains in general. And we were blessed by a piece of land that has we got about 9 acres. And so I even carved my own little private hiking trail out through the woods around my house. So from time to time,
that's great.
If I can't make it to the big trails, I'll at least hike that. It's about a half-mile trail. So, and if I walk it one way and then walk it back, it's about a mile. So it's been awesome. So we really like it here.
So, what would you say your favorite thing about Maryville is?
Well, I love that it used to be a small mountain town, and it was very quaint and low key. I mean, that was one of the reasons we came here too, because we wanted to get back to small community mountains, not around the hustle and bustle of the big city. Because when I lived in Charlotte, I actually lived on the outskirts of Charlotte in an area called Gastonia. And in the time I lived there, I just watched that place get developed like crazy. I mean, traffic just, my commute to work got to where it's taking me an hour each way. And then when it was really bad, it would take almost an hour and a half. And I was like, I can't live like this. So when we moved here, it was everything we loved. It was small. There was, the mountains were over here. The city of Knoxville was over here. So it's kind of nice juxtaposition between the two. So I love that, and I still do. The only downside is that it's growing exponentially, and from what I understand, a lot of places are. I just wish that would slow down, because the traffic is getting crazy here. A lot of the trails I hiked when I first moved here, you could go and be by yourself and never see another person for a couple of hours. And now when I go out, there'll be groups of people and stuff, which, I mean, that's cool. I'm not like anti-person, but when you're trying to get inspired and get in that mode, it's kind of hard to do when you keep encountering more and more people.
Exactly. Yeah. So we are getting to what is one of my favorite questions. I've posed this question in every one of these that I've done, and I always get the most interesting answers. And that is, knowing everything that you know now, Dempsey, if you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Start writing more. Like, just focus on writing my own music more. I contributed a good bit to Bloodline Severed when I was with them, but just writing for myself, writing lyrics, putting my thoughts and my emotions down, even if it's not going to be a song per se, but just to write stuff. Write more and continue to learn. Don't discredit any kind of music right off the bat. Check out more music. And I wish I would have started learning to record a lot earlier. That's a whole different beast. And I have a profound respect for audio engineers and producers and stuff now after trying to do what I do. I would have liked to have done that sooner. I wish I would tell myself, hey, you might even enjoy this as a career in the future if you would just learn how to record sooner and just, I would have not believed if I could talk to my younger self that someday my music would be listened to all over the world. I'm still humbled and find that just so awesome. I mean, the other day I sent out albums to anywhere from Switzerland to Germany. People want to listen to my stuff. And if I could tell my younger self, hey, take what you're doing serious. It's not just, just don't do this for fun. You're going to reach people, and not just your music, but spiritually. You're going to be able to minister through your music. You're going to be able to, I don't want to use the word evangelize because I don't do it for evangelism, but I have a lot of people tell me messages all the time how their music has touched them spiritually. And that just kind of motivates me. That I find a lot of just passion for it because of that very reason. So I would just tell myself, if I knew that, can tell my younger me all this stuff, that would be it. Just take it more seriously and just continue to learn and don't just kind of half-heartedly go into it, but give it your all. Because I think I'm a lot further along right now than what I am.
Gotcha. So, do you have any suggestions for any other bands, I guess maybe similar to yourself, to check out or potentially reach out to for one of these live stream chats?
Yeah. There's actually a few. I've not personally met some of these guys I'm going to mention, but I do know that they're similar. I don't know if you're familiar with the band called Symphony of Heaven. I want to say they're out of Indiana, but they're a Christian blackened death metal. They play live, and they're really good. Those guys, I respect them a lot. A friend of mine, Derek Corzine, he has a project called From Heaven, and actually he does two projects, that and then another one called Bloodthirsty. And he also has a studio. He's becoming, from what I can understand, he's almost full-time audio engineer. I met him when I left Bloodline Severed for that little time away that I was talking about before. He kind of stepped in and took over my role. And then when he left, I stepped back into the band. He's a phenomenal musician, phenomenal guitarist, great producer. I would check him out. And last but not least, the guys from my former band, Bloodline Severed, several of them are starting a new project called Sond. It's SOND. They're getting ready to put out new music, and they just did their first live show, I think, this weekend. They're on Instagram, Facebook, and stuff, but their stuff is more, it's very progressive. The other two guys I was talking about, it's definitely more metal. But these guys, they're kind of hard to pigeonhole, actually. I would say if you're into something like Periphery and Mastodon, maybe if you mash that together, it's heavy, but there's not really so much of the growling. It's actually singing. They're really good. I would recommend them too. So there's probably more, but those are the ones off the top of my head. I would say check them out.
Gotcha. So heavy but melodic.
Yes. Yeah, definitely melodic. Yeah.
So we're also at the point where another one of my favorite segments. I've been doing this the entire time I've been doing these, and that is I've allowed each of my guests to pose a question for the next person in the hot seat. And so one of my previous guests posed this question, and that is for you and or your band. What would be a dream show lineup for you to open for?
Ooh,
if you were playing live.
Yeah, if I played live,
yeah.
Honestly, I'd have to go with probably my current influences, the bands that I listen to the most right now. I mean, there's a lot. I've got a huge record collection behind me of bands. But whenever somebody asks me what my music sounds like, I say if you take Wolves in the Throne Room, Alcest and Agalloch, and throw them in a blender, you kind of get what Vials of Wrath is. I like
Mm-hmm.
I like the traditional, just darker atmosphere Wolves in a Throne Room has. They have a great vibe with their music. I've seen them live probably more than any other band. I bet I've seen them 5 or 6 times. Next to that would be Agalock, which actually is my favorite band. Although they broke up, they've reunited recently and are starting to do a few shows. I'd love to see them live, but I mean, most of the stuff they do is they're on the West Coast or in other countries. If they get anywhere near the East Coast, I'll definitely be there. And like I said, Alcest, which is more what they're calling black gaze, which he integrates black metal and shoegaze music. His stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that little clip you played earlier, if you were to listen to Alcest and then hear my stuff that's very melodic and atmospheric, you would see where I'll draw that from. So having said that, if you take all three of those bands that and put them on a bill, and if I could open for them, that would be great. Although I probably would be scared to death because I feel like my music doesn't hold a candle to them. But that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have a question you would like to pose to the next person in the hot seat?
Yeah, and I actually get asked this a lot, but I never have a chance to ask other bands what their point of view is on this. Um, well, and that being said, if they're Christian artists, do you, as a Christian artist, think it's okay to listen to bands who are not Christian? And specifically within the metal genre, do you think it's okay to listen to certain metal bands? And where do you draw the line at like what you won't listen to? I get asked that all the time. Like, you know, people are surprised that I have Burzum albums because, I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Burzum. I won't go into all that, but you can't deny that he was hugely influential on the black metal scene. Some of those bands, I don't listen to them much, but just because of obviously what they represent. I don't listen to any openly satanic or anti-Christian bands, but I do listen to some, like I like to call them Wiccan, pagan bands. Some of them are into Viking lore type stuff. But yeah, having said that, you know, if you have a Christian artist that I would like to know other Christian artists, you know, where do they draw the line and like what kind of music they will and won't listen to and why is that?
Gotcha. So aside from what you have on Instagram, do you have any other social media you'd like to hype?
Just Facebook. You know, I don't really get on Facebook as much as I used to. I've got my
Mm-hmm.
Instagram set up to where automatically when I post there, it feeds my Facebook. I'll jump on there maybe once a week just to see what's going on and answer a few messages and stuff. But that's about it as far as socials. Bandcamp is my primary venue for accessing my merchandise, I guess, if you want to listen to my music or buy anything like that. And I recently launched a store. It's a big cartel store, and I'm afraid I don't have the link right off. But if you go to my bio on Instagram, it's in the link tree. There's a couple of limited edition shirts there and stuff. That's about it. You know, I'm not a huge social media guy. I do enough to keep my music out there, and you know, I'll take a lot of photos when I go hiking or video footage, and I like to share that with my fans.
Gotcha.
That's about it.
So, you know, I won't ask you to reveal too many secrets, but can you tell us anything about the new material that you're working on?
Sure. I've only got. I just finished my second song. I want to do a full album. I put out an EP of a couple of songs last year. This is all completely new material. It's very early in the writing phase. I've got enough riffs and ideas, song titles and lyrical content that I'm flushing it out now. It's pretty much still. I'm still trying to stay true to what I've done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the atmospheric stuff, a lot of ambient acoustic guitars, clean guitars, layered with the heavy aggressive stuff. I'm dabbling in a couple of other little things that I might try to work in there. Dungeon synth is actually as a genre I've been getting into a little bit lately. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
No.
Yeah, it's mostly synthesizer music. The
Mm-hmm.
name kind of comes from a lot of it's inspired by like the medieval time period of like I guess what you would listen to if you were in a castle or in dungeons or whatnot. Um, Maybe at a Renaissance festival. I don't know. A lot of the Burzum
Gotcha.
stuff. He would almost always have a dungeon synth song on a lot of his early material. But that's like a whole full blown genre, and it has been for a few years now. But I've really been getting into that for some reason lately. I just like it's very tranquil to me and very calming. And I've always had keyboards and synthesizers in my music, but I'm dabbling with integrating a little more of that into some of it, and maybe even some post-rock stuff. I want to experiment some and push the limits a little bit more. I always like to progress, but I don't like to get so far away from what I've established that it doesn't even sound like Vials of Wrath anymore. So that's about it. I don't really have an album title yet. A few ideas for the album art. Like I said, if all goes well, I'm really in a very productive mode right now. I'd like to have something out maybe the first part of next year.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, Dempsey, and my apologies for the technical issues we had.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I was a media director for years. Anything and everything can happen when you're dealing with technology.
Yep. And speaking of merchandise, I've got my
cool.
first piece of merch, and I'm working on getting a store set up. So there'll be news on that near term. For those of you that are watching live, thank you for hanging in. For those of you that are watching the replay, thank you for that. If you like what we're doing here, definitely spread the word. I've got to try to figure out, what's going on with Instagram, because apparently they've removed my streaming privileges because they said I was broadcasting nudity, which clearly wasn't happening. But anyway, so we may be going to being live on YouTube and Twitter and just reposting on Instagram if they're going to play that way. But anyway, you got to roll with the changes. But anyway, thank you for your time, and I'll be in touch with links when the reposts and such go up. But anyway, have a great night, and we'll talk soon.
All right, appreciate it. Have a good one.
Yep.